In the summer of 1940, the fate of the free world hung on a thin blue line of exhaust smoke and courage. The British Royal Air Force stood alone against the might of the German Luftwaffe. They started the war with fabric-covered biplanes that looked like relics from the previous conflict, and ended it with jet-powered meteors screaming across the sky at speeds their grandfathers couldn't have imagined. From the desperate dogfights over London to the dark, freezing nights over Berlin, British aviation was a mix of desperate improvisation and engineering brilliance. They built bombers out of wood that flew faster than fighters, and naval planes held together by string that sank the most powerful battleships on Earth. Some of these machines became legends, immortalized in statues and films. Others were death traps that have been quietly forgotten by history. In this video, we break down every British aircraft of World War II. Let's begin with the fighters, the Shield of Britain. Gladiator. Known as the Last Knight, this was the RAF's last biplane fighter. With its enclosed cockpit and 4 machine guns, it was the pinnacle of biplane design, but completely obsolete by 1940. Despite being outclassed by German monoplanes, brave pilots flew them in the defense of Malta and the frozen lakes of Norway, proving that maneuverability could sometimes beat raw speed. The next one, Hawker Hurricane, the true workhorse of the Battle of Britain. While the Spitfire got the glory, the Hurricane did the heavy lifting. It featured a boxy, fabric-covered rear fuselage and a thick wing profile. It was a stable gun platform, rugged enough to take a beating and easy to repair. It shot down more enemy aircraft in 1940 than all other defenses combined. Up next, Supermarine Spitfire. The icon, with its graceful elliptical wings and the roar of its Merlin engine, this all-metal fighter was the symbol of British defiance. Fast, agile, and constantly evolved, it went from the Mark I with 8 machine guns to the late-war Griffin-powered monsters that could chase down German jets. It was the plane every pilot wanted to fly. Now this is the Defiant. A tragic experiment. This fighter had no forward-firing guns. Instead, all its firepower was concentrated in a heavy, power-operated turret behind the pilot. It was a death trap in daylight dogfights, as it couldn't maneuver with the extra weight. It eventually found a second life as a night fighter, painting the sky black to hide its silhouette. Moving on to the Hawker Typhoon. A massive, brutish machine. Originally designed to replace the Hurricane, it suffered from a thick wing and tail structural failures. But at low altitudes, it was a monster. Armed with rockets and 4 20 cannons, it became the terror of German armor in Normandy, smashing tanks with terrifying precision. The next one, Hawker Tempest. The evolution of the Typhoon. By thinning the wing and moving the radiators, Hawker created one of the fastest piston-engine fighters of the war. It was a high-speed interceptor, specifically tasked with chasing down and tipping over the German V-1 flying bombs before they could hit London. Finishing this section with the Meteor. The future arrived early. This was the only Allied jet fighter to see combat in WWII. Powered by 2 turbojet engines, it had a distinct twin-nacelle profile. While the RAF was cautious and kept it over home soil to protect the secret technology, it proved that the age of the propeller was coming to an end. Next on the list is heavy fighters and night fighters. Bristol. Nicknamed Whispering Death by the Japanese. This was a rugged, twin-engine heavy fighter built from parts of the bomber. With 4 cannons in the nose and 6 machine guns in the wings, its firepower was devastating. It excelled as a night fighter and a maritime strike aircraft, blasting ships with rockets and torpedoes. The next one, Mosquito. Known as the Wooden Wonder. In an age of steel and aluminum, this plane was made of spruce and balsa wood. It was so fast that it didn't need defensive guns. It simply outran everything. It served as a fighter bomber, a pathfinder, and a photo reconnaissance aircraft. It is widely considered one of the most versatile planes ever built. Up next, Hornet, a scaled-down, overpowered version of the Mosquito. Built with a mix of wood and metal, it was one of the fastest piston-engine aircraft ever made, reaching speeds over 470. Although it arrived too late to see major combat, it represented the absolute peak of propeller-driven fighter design. Now this is the Westland Whirlwind, Britain's first twin-engine cannon fighter. It featured a sleek, slender fuselage and a high tail. While it packed a punch with 420 cannons in the nose, it was plagued by unreliable engines and short range, leading to a very limited production run. Moving on to the Fleet Air Arm, naval aircraft. Swordfish, affectionately known as this archaic biplane looked like it belonged in World War I with its open cockpit and fabric skin. Yet it was legendary. It crippled the Italian fleet at Taranto and jammed the rudder of the Bismarck. It proved that slow speed could be an asset, as modern gunnery computers couldn't calculate for a plane flying that slowly. The next one, Blackburn Skua, the Navy's first monoplane dive bomber and fighter. It was a strange hybrid that wasn't particularly good at either role. However, it holds the distinction of scoring the first confirmed British aerial kill of the war. It was eventually withdrawn after suffering heavy losses off the coast of Norway. Up next, Barracuda, an ungainly, high-wing monoplane that looked like a collection of spare parts flying in formation. It featured massive flaps for dive bombing. Despite its awkward looks, it was effective, famously carrying out the carrier raids that damaged the German battleship in the Norwegian fjords. Now this is the Supermarine, essentially a Spitfire with a tail hook. While it brought Spitfire performance to the sea, it was too delicate for carrier operations. The narrow landing gear often collapsed on rough carrier decks, leading to a high accident rate. It was a thoroughbred racehorse trying to do the work of a mule. The next one, Firefly, a heavy two-seat reconnaissance fighter. It was robust, powerful, and armed with 420 cannons. Unlike it was built to take the punishment of carrier landings. It saw extensive action in the Pacific theater, hunting Japanese shipping and ground targets. Finishing this section with the Blackburn Firebrand, a massive single-seat strike fighter designed to carry a torpedo. It was a beast of an aircraft, plagued by engine issues and poor handling. It arrived too late for the war but showcased the Navy's shift toward heavy, single-seat attack aircraft. Now let's look at the bombers, the Hammer. Battle, a tragic failure. This single-engine light bomber was obsolete the moment the war started. Slow and poorly armed, they were slaughtered by German fighters during the Battle of France. It served as a grim lesson that pre-war designs could not survive modern air combat. The next one, Bristol Blenheim, a twin-engine light bomber with a distinctive glass nose. In 1939, it was faster than many fighters, but by 1940, it was vulnerable prey. It was used for everything from bombing to night fighting, often suffering heavy casualties as the RAF struggled to hold the line. Up next, Wellington, known affectionately as Wimpy. It featured a unique geodetic basket weave framework covered in fabric. This made it incredibly tough. Wellingtons often returned home with massive holes burned through the fabric, the metal skeleton still holding together. It was the backbone of the early night bombing campaign. Now this is nicknamed the Flying Panhandle due to its odd, nose-down flying attitude. It was a boxy, angular medium bomber. While slow and unrefined, it was the first British bomber to fly over Berlin, dropping propaganda leaflets in the early days of the phony war. The next one, Page, known as the Flying Suitcase because it was so narrow and cramped. It was a fast medium bomber, but the crew positions were so tight that if the pilot was killed, it was almost impossible for another crewman to take the controls. Moving on to the Short Stirling, the RAF's first four-engine heavy bomber. It was massive but suffered from a design flaw. The wings were too short to fit into standard hangars. This limited its altitude, forcing it to fly low where it was vulnerable to flak. It was eventually relegated to towing gliders. The next one, Paige Halifax, the unsung hero of Bomber Command. Overshadowed by the Lancaster, the Halifax was a sturdy, four-engine heavy bomber that carried a massive load. It was versatile, serving not just as a bomber but also towing gliders and dropping agents into occupied Europe. Finishing this section with the Lancaster, the legend of the night skis. With its massive uninterrupted bomb bay, it could carry the largest weapons of the war, including the 22,000 Grand Slam earthquake bomb. From the dam busters' raid to the destruction of German industry, the Lancaster was the sledgehammer of the RAF. Continuing with coastal and reconnaissance. Short Sunderland. Nicknamed the Flying Porcupine by the Germans because it bristled with defensive machine guns. This massive flying boat patrolled the Atlantic for U-boats. It had a galley and sleeping quarters for the crew, allowing it to stay airborne for over 13 hours at a time. The next one, Supermarine Walrus. Known as this ugly pusher-propeller amphibian looked ridiculous, but it was a lifesaver. Launched from catapults on battleships, it was used for spotting and, crucially, for rescuing downed pilots from the English Channel. Up next, Westland Lysander, a high-wing monoplane designed for Army cooperation. It found its fame with the Special Operations Executive, SOE. With its incredible short takeoff and landing (STOL) capabilities, it slipped into muddy French fields at night to drop off spies and pick up resistance leaders under the nose of the Gestapo. Next on the list is transports and trainers. Tiger Moth, the primary trainer. If you flew a Spitfire or a Lancaster, you started in a Tiger Moth. This bright yellow biplane was forgiving but required skill to master. It was the cradle of the Royal Air Force, training tens of thousands of pilots. The next one, Airspeed, a wooden troop-carrying glider. It had no engine and was towed into battle by bombers. It carried 30 troops or a jeep. These silent workhorses were critical during D-Day and Operation Market Garden, crash-landing into fields to deliver airborne troops behind enemy lines. Up next, General Aircraft Hamilcar, a monster of a glider. It was designed specifically to carry heavy equipment, including the Tetrarch light tank. It allowed airborne forces to land with immediate armor support, a capability that surprised the Germans on multiple occasions. Finishing off with the York, a transport aircraft derived from the Lancaster bomber. It used the wings and tail of the Lancaster, but featured a new, boxy fuselage for cargo and passengers. It became the primary VIP transport for leaders like Churchill, flying across the globe in relative comfort. Part 3, the outro. From the fabric wings of the Tiger Moth to the jet engines of the Meteor, the British aircraft industry performed miracles under the constant threat of bombardment. They built the machines that saved an island and liberated a continent. Looking at this list, which British aircraft do you think was the most critical to the Allied victory? The Spitfire, the Lancaster, or the Mosquito? Let us know in the comments below. This is USGI Archives. Subscribe for more.